Hey guys, it's Abby. I hope you are doing well and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Abby. I'm an artist and author, and today we are going to be talking about the author side of my job, and I realized that I've never talked about it here online. So you're probably wondering, like, how does a regular 20-something-year-old gets like published and has books translated into 9 languages, has 100,000 plus copies sold, has 6 books already published in the international scene, as well as an upcoming book that is gonna be published next year. I got my notes. Let's get to it. So today I'm gonna share with you 5 qualities that you'll be needing in order to become an author. The first one is having a strong online presence. I cannot stress this enough, but you do know that social media is kind of like a personal resume. Well, not just social media, but basically having a website, having a following, having the whole shebang. And I understand it can be a bit harder to do these days. I started on the internet like 2010. I think 2010 was like my start. I was on Tumblr, and by that time I was just really into designing and drawing and doing things for fun. But you know, moving to Instagram has in some way benefited me because a lot of people found me on Instagram, and having an online presence is really key because publishers are looking at numbers, and publishers really want authors who have their own audience. That way when they promote a book, it's easier for the audience to buy the book, and in that way their publishing house gets a lot of clout and traction, and it benefits both ways because you sell the book, your audience buys it, your publishing house gets money, you get money, everyone is happy. It's a good business deal, basically. I realized that because over the years I've built up pretty much a good following on my social media platforms and online, is that I know what you guys want. I think I know what my audience needs, and that is something I try to translate into my books, and that has also helped me like determine, oh, you know, our next topic should probably be about this. And I think in some way that also benefited me because I realized that, oh, maybe I should write about creativity, self-help advice, and not just about lettering, journaling. I wanted to really provide this opportunity for my audience to get what they need through my books. I know this doesn't sound optimal, but I think a key factor also is when publishers see you as some sort of leader or pioneering in a specific field. I remember when I started lettering, and I always asked my publisher, like, why did you get me? I'm like a 22-year-old person. You could have gotten someone else, but they're like, you know, you're one of the first people who started hand lettering in the Philippines, so I think it was optimal to target you and invite you to write for us, because in some way also my age at that time helped, like, you know, reach a younger audience, and I guess that was the target at that time. So, you know, sometimes it's a marketing decision and sometimes it just works. You know, if you're fit for the job, you will be fit for the job. Second thing you need to have is a solid, concrete idea. If I ask you now what your book is going to be about, you have to be able to answer it to me in 1 sentence. And I think that in itself is an elevator pitch. I'd like to thank my advertising roots for helping me like get a hold of like the idea of marketing and advertising, because that really helped me with my book publishing job and my, no, I'm not a publisher, but my author job basically. Having a pitch is really important because when you're stepping in to talk to the publisher, they might just tell you like, oh, we want it to be this, to be that, to be la la la, and you might just feel overwhelmed. And sometimes you have to be honest with yourself, like, can you do this topic? I remember when an editor asked me if I can do bullet journaling for a book, and I immediately declined. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not good at bullet journaling. But when I got invited to do journaling, I was like, okay, I think this is something that's within my realm of knowledge and something that I can definitely share. So having a pitch also at the start helps you solidify the whole concept of your book without even writing it yet. And that is an important part, because when you get to the writing, you might maneuver or move from several different topics, and it's going to be hard for you in the long run to work on a concrete idea. I don't know if that's making sense, but as a reference, when I first worked on the lettering book, of course there was no pitch. They were like, Abby, we want to get you, let's work on it, here's what we want. But at the time, it was also my first time to become an author, so basically my publisher held my hand throughout the whole process. Hi, Coco. But I remember when I was working on the second book, which is the ABCs of Journaling, I did tell my publisher, like, can we go on a meeting? I'm gonna discuss with you all the things that I think should be in this book, because when they told me you should write a book about journaling, I was really into it, but also there were so many topics that I felt could be included in the book, and I had to sort of narrow it down from the beginning. I started to do a pitch where I would include what the book is about, also some competitive or comparative titles. These are books that are already published that may have similar topics as you. It's really important to have like a research of your industry and knowing like what books are out in the market. I like writing down what's already inside the book, like chapters, topic points per chapter, how many pages if it hasn't been proposed yet. Usually for international publishing, they give me a page count. It's usually 128 pages. In the Philippines, for me, I think my first few books with Summit were like 100, but it could go up to like 120 plus or 140 plus depending on the meat of the book, the costing, and all the materials that are needed to print the book. For international, I don't send pitches, but they do ask me, like for the current one that I'm writing, I had to submit a table of contents so that they know what to expect with this book, and once I was approved, I got the go signal that I was gonna get the book published. Now let's talk about skills. So when you're an author, in the common knowledge of everyone, I would say, when you think about author, it is the person who writes the book. But if you're working on an art book like me, you don't just write, you also illustrate, you also take photos, you do the whole shebang. Most of the time, when you're working on a book, you have to have pretty much a solid foundation of these skills. And you don't have to have editing skills because you have an editor to do that. But the main writing is kind of a difficult task, but is something that is required because obviously when you're buying a book, it's full of words and images. For photographers, you can sometimes work with actual photographers. Some of them, my friends, I would hire them to work with me on projects, but most of the photos I have on my books are actually from my photo library. So all the photos I took while traveling, while posting on Instagram, I try to save them and have a backup because these will get published. So apart from those skills, what else? I think it's kind of key to have some sort of knowledge with Microsoft Office, of course. I use Word or Google Docs to write my text depending on who the editor is and what their style is. I also would suggest having some sort of knowledge with Adobe, Photoshop, or InDesign, or Illustrator, or Canva, or anything design related, because this will help you visualize certain ideas. Like for example, when I was working on my magazine before, I didn't know how to use InDesign yet, but I told my art directors, like, I want the layout to look like this. Can you make it like this? And I would Photoshop a page just so I have an idea of how I want it to look like. So that's also definitely key when you are going to work on a book, especially about creativity or an art book, if that makes sense. I think in hindsight, you also need to have a little bit of knowledge in marketing. You can't just have the book, tell people to buy it, and that's it, and call it a day. That's not how it is. For me, I try to make my own marketing strategy just because, you know, I'm a marketing geek and I learned how to promote books in such a way that it's not, buy this! It's more of like, this is my book. In the next post, I'll talk about how I made the book. Another post, I'll talk about the story behind one part of the book. And another one can be some sort of like anecdote from something and something and something. And I think having that knack for storytelling is really important, because being able to translate that and telling people to buy it is not as easy as it looks. You can't just say buy now, because they're probably like, you know, I don't know, when people buy books, it's not just like, I'll buy this. It's really like, wait, do I like the story behind it? Or in my case, do I like the techniques? Do I want to learn about lettering? Do I want to learn about journaling? Do I even know ABC? What is this book gonna give me? What value is it gonna provide in my creative journey? So there are a lot of factors that are being at play here. So it's really important to have a little bit of knack on marketing and knowing how to talk about your book. The next one, I think, is something that would be the key ingredient in order for you to actually get published, is really two things, which is discipline and commitment. I can't stress this enough, but people think writing a book is such an easy task, especially when I just post online like, I made a book, and people are like, oh my god, you made a book! I just want to tell them, like, guys, it took me a whole year to write a book, and a lot of blood, sweat, and actual tears, and mental breakdowns and anxiety attacks. And I can never stress how it's so reduced to a single post on Instagram. I guess that's how it is these days. That's why I prefer this video medium in such way. And I think because of that, people don't see how much discipline it does take to write a book. It's not as easy as writing for a day and calling it a day. It takes a lot of writing, researching, ideation, basically having a lot of doubts within yourself, and also asking yourself a lot of questions. Sometimes I would think of asking someone else, like maybe my editor, but at the same time I'm just like, no, I have to answer this because I'm the author. So you basically have to answer your own questions. I guess the last thing that I can share is the idea of accepting change. So there are many changes that happen when it comes to publishing. Of course, you write the thing, you create, you draw, submit everything, but editors could slash it, remove some parts, edit some parts to fit the book, and that is totally normal. So I think it's really important to have a good relationship with your editor, whoever he or she may be. And at the same time, you know, when it gets published, there might be some content that might not make it to final, so you have to be able to let that go. There may also be some mishaps. For example, one of my books, I was supposed to write a book last year, but because of the pandemic, we had to stop because printers weren't operating. So until now, I still don't know where the book is. So I'm like, okay, it's on pause. A lot of different things happen when you're publishing a book. So just be prepared for the changes. It's not like, you know, there's always a workaround. I think the good thing about working with books is you can always solve problems within the whole realm of the publishing industry. So I think that's fine. Lastly, I want to touch on something because you're probably wondering, like, how much does an author make? So the idea of making money when writing books, it's mostly like you get a cash advance. So it's kind of like a salary, like, okay, this is your cash advance, write the book. So I usually get paid early, and with that money, I can, you know, get motivation and write. And that goes straight to my savings. And then once the book is published, you have a percentage called royalties per copy sold. That's why you have to market your book, because the more copies you sell, the more money the publishing house gets, the more money you get for royalties. And you know, sometimes I just go and pick up my check. I'm like, oh, I earned this much, not bad, because I sold X amount of books. And in some way, that is passive income. So the more you promote your book, the more people buy it, the more you also get money. So it's a win-win situation. Now, if you're probably wondering, why not self-publish instead? I would, but you know, the distribution channels of publishing houses are pretty much wider. So if you want to reach a wider audience, just leave it to the publishing house experts. They know what they're doing, and I think that's really important to start. I also have met so many people because of publishing my books with Summit and also with Rockport and Quarto Publishing. So Quarto and Rockport are just in one company. Rockport's one of their imprints. So yeah, if you're interested to know more about my books though, I will leave links down below on where you can get it locally and internationally. I hope this author video, I don't know, you're supposed to call it author video. I hope this gave you some insight on how I got published as an author, and maybe you can use it for your future self if you want to get published as well. I do think that everyone has an opportunity to be published. It's just finding the right people to publish for you and finding the right story to tell. I think that's really, really key, and you have to work hard. I think that's something that I'm gonna leave you with. So thank you so much for watching this video. Of course, I wasn't promoting enough, but I am writing a book on travel journaling. Woo! It's coming out next year, so I do hope you look forward to that.